My name's Mark Warner. I guess I was in the keynote this morning, so you might have seen me there. But just to reiterate, so I'm from Cape Town, and one of the directors of a company called Siyavula. Siyavula means we are opening. It's an Nguni word, and 4 of South Africa's 11 official languages have the Nguni language as their root. So it's a word that means the same thing to more South Africans than any other. Well, it's in a language that means the same thing to more South Africans than any other language could be chosen. So so I'm going to talk a little bit about our history and what we've been doing. So some of you might have seen some of our work in the past, and we've kind of changed what we've been doing over the years. All of our work started with a project a long time ago called the Free High School Science Texts, which was an initiative to collaboratively author content by graduate students online. And in the course of 5 years, they collaboratively authored grade 10, 11, and 12 maths and physical science textbooks for South Africa. And that actually got the Shuttleworth Foundation, which is a small philanthropic foundation that at the time was based in South Africa. They've now since moved to the Isle of Man. I'm interested in the process. And then within the foundation, we started a project called Siyavula, and I was the project manager of that originally, to try to create open content for all grades and subjects in English for the South African curriculum. So it was relatively ambitious. In 3 years, wrap up everything in English. And that we did relatively well in acquiring content and making it available. We partnered with the Connections project out of Houston, so at Rice University in Houston, Texas. And we put up sort of 30,000 pages of content on their platform, and we're trying to get teachers to use it. And what we really wanted to do, our premise for sustainable development of content, was to use somebody else's platform like that, Connections had traction, and then try to use the content to seed communities of practice of educators to come together and contextualize that. So really embrace openness in all things. That's really important to us. And so there, if we could get these educators to come together and be really adopt really open kind of and transparent group processes, that would provide the social capital for sharing. And then if we use open licenses, that's the legal framework for sharing. And then we would use open source software and open standards to make sure that remixing and all of that was possible. So we kind of embraced open in everything that we did. And then there was kind of a crazy random opportunity. So I'm going to talk about how we run as a business, but this isn't easily replicable in other countries. I don't have a shrink-wrapped business model for anybody. I don't even know if we've got one yet. But this is, I guess, the holy grail at the moment in the OER space, especially after the reminder about what happened to Federal Knowledge this morning. So in South Africa, in October, or I think it was October of 2010, we had this massive public sector strike. It was terrible. Even the nurses went on strike, babies were dying in hospitals. But a key part of that whole process is that our unions are very organized and very strong in South Africa. There's actually an organization called COSATU, which is just an organization that manages all the unions. And so all of their member unions had to go on strike, which included the teachers for more than 3 weeks. So all teachers in South African schools missed more than 3 weeks of a school year at one point, which is quite a challenging thing for the Department of Basic Education to deal with. And which is, they were looking for something radical. So we've had this fortunate opportunity, if you like, where there's this absolute crisis, and as soon as there's a crisis like that, people are prepared to consider new and different things. So free content and open content suddenly became something that might actually have an impact. And so they literally phoned us one day in the office and said they were keen to print our books, the books that were part of that Free High School Science Text project, the maths and science books. And on the back of that, we thought, you know what, we've got real traction now. They didn't actually print the books at that time. They just made them available on their website. But we figured, actually, we've got an opportunity here. We've got a good relationship with this National Department of Basic Education. If we can't turn that into a business model, then we shouldn't be in business. So we didn't have a plan, but we decided we would spin out. And we got an investor, the PSG Financial Services group, as a commercial investor. And so both the Shuttleworth Foundation and PSG are shareholders in the company. So we're a for-profit company. We wanted to be a social enterprise. In some countries there is such a thing as a social enterprise with certain legal constraints and shareholding and dividends and things like that. This doesn't exist in South Africa. There's no legal entity. So we tried to kind of make our own. balancing the shareholding of the Shuttleworth Foundation with that of PSG, and writing a lot of our open mission into our shareholders' agreements. Of course, as soon as you have as soon as you control the shares, you can always change those documents. But at the moment, things like our content being released under a CC BY license, not an NC license, not an ND license, a CC BY license that's written into our shareholders' agreement. Anything we do by, for, or with the community has to be openly licensed. That's in our shareholders' agreement. So we really tried. And so we frame ourselves as a social enterprise, and our mission is to make sure that learners in South Africa have access to educational resources of the highest quality. That's it. And we try to do that by leveraging the existing community. That's really important to us. Openness and technology. And our focus, we develop a lot of content. So it's not fair to say that we're only a technology company, but we do spend a lot of our time trying to use technology to make everything we do much more efficient. And the community, openness, and technology all bring special things to what we do. And in terms of developing educational resources, using the broadest possible community helps us make sure that those resources are appropriate, relevant, etc. But our community extends beyond teachers. We include academics, we include the curriculum specialists from the national department, and then people from industry. I mean, in as much as they're prepared to contribute, we try to get them to. The one thing we find in South Africa, and I think it's probably true here as well, but I can't be certain, is a lot of people want to contribute and help out in the education sector. They want to help education. Everybody knows a better educated society is better for everybody. It's a win-win situation. But finding a way to help is challenging, especially with a lot of regulations and things like that. So what we provide is a framework for the community to plug into. You give us 5 hours of your time as an expert on something, proofreading a chapter, and we'll make sure that that book gets on the government approved list, etc. And then openness is key to the accessibility, actually, and building real communities. And technology just makes things scalable and much more efficient. So little company, sort of 18 months old, 25 members. Here's the shareholding. So the PSG group owns 25%, Shuttleworth Foundation about 24%, and then we still have control, but management still has day-to-day control for now. And we've got quite a diverse company with quite an academic background. So we're interested in education, and many of our staff have spent a lot of time investing in their own personal education. So there's a real passion for education. So the point we got to after spinning out as a company and engaging with our national department was to work with communities of educators to produce the titles that you see up here at the moment. So we've got grades 4, 5, and 6 natural sciences, grades 7, 8, and 9 grades 4, 5, and 6 natural sciences and technology. They're combined into one subject. In grades 7, 8, and 9, we've got natural sciences that we've developed. And then in 10, 11, and 12, we've got mathematics and physical sciences. In South Africa, we choose to put chemistry and physics into one subject, which we call physical sciences. So that's physics and chemistry content. And the community really helps us there, develop those resources, proofread those resources, feedback with ideas for suggestions, activities. But the truth is, we spend a lot of time massaging that content, authoring content. We sometimes commission paid authors. What we spend a lot of time trying to do is figure out what value different types of volunteers and different communities can actually add. And sometimes it's more important that they give us the ideas for exercises, activities, real classroom experiences, but they're not necessarily very good authors. So we feed that into our authoring process, which sometimes is done by our team, sometimes done by commissioned external authors, but the community always plays an integral role in unpacking the curriculum, designing the content, the structure, the flow, and then the proofreading. And when we do the proofreading of content, we try to do it online, and we try to make sure that those specialists from government have to do their proofreading in a transparent way and their comments in a transparent way with the community. They can see the community's feedback, the community can see their feedback, and they can comment on each other's feedback. And that's really powerful. Transparency is an amazing thing. As soon as everybody can actually give each other feedback on their feedback, then you've got a nice self-correcting system. So we've produced all of those resources, and then the accessibility part. So what we've been really lucky with is the National Department of Basic Education taking these titles and printing them then for the whole country. So in terms of adoption, specifically in the case of 4 to 6, the science books, when those books went out, we were rolling out a new curriculum, and none of the traditional publishers were able to produce books on time for the rollout. So the government had to make this decision about what, they didn't know what to do. But they had the textbook teams review all of our content, and it was good enough. So in that case, we were absolutely the only resource in existence that was curriculum-aligned. I think we've got great resources. It's not that we were used because we were the only thing. But there were no publishers' books to compete with even. And that reached 3 million kids at the beginning of this year, which is really nice. So in South Africa, print is still a massive, you've got meeting of print requirements, still a massive accessibility requirement. It's the only way to get to some learners. But then we've built websites for all of the books so you can read them online for free. There's a funny piece about what we do. If you get one of our books and you open it, you'll see that there's a CC BY ND license, and they call us all hypocrites. The government isn't happy with the books that they distribute being under anything that says they can be changed. So we just slap the ND license on the PDF files that go to the printers for government to distribute. And then on the website, you'll find the same content without the government logo under an CC BY license. And that's just being pragmatic. I'm not going to get on a soapbox and shout. It was a 5-minute conversation with the legal team. Come to that decision, we can move from there. But what's important for us is there's a ton of open content that we can use to enrich that stuff. So we leverage the PhET simulations, all the videos that are being shared on YouTube, etc., to enrich the content on the websites. And we try to be as device agnostic as possible. So, you know, a website that works on smartphones, but also low-end feature phones. That's very important for us in the developing context. And so the maths and science websites get about 500,000 visitors per month each. And that's out of a total pool of 1.5 million. So we're getting 30% of the kids just reading it on a device of some sort. And out of that 500,000, 2/5 are actually on a low-end feature phone. And this isn't fun content, and you're reading it on a crappy device. You know, it's maths and physical science content. It's hardly popular, but we get massive traction. So using the open license and open formats properly, and some open source technologies allowed us to really leverage that. And then there's high mobile penetration in South Africa. So we're having massive impact just with the website alone, sort of reaching 30% of the kids, which we're really excited about. But then with the print, we get to everybody. And then the website for the 4 to 6 books was launched earlier this year. It's a little bit different, but again, links to video simulations, etc. And it's also device agnostic, or as device agnostic as possible. So we're having real impact in that respect. And then so the hard costs of the production, we actually include in our community sponsors. So the community of teachers and experts and academics that help us write the titles, but there's sponsors that come on board because of this opportunity to have their logo go out on every single day. So it's a massively leveraged investment for some corporate to put their logo on one of these books and pay for hard costs for workshops and that. Because it costs them about, say, $1 million, for example, R1 million, roughly, to put their title on one of our books. And when the department prints those books and distributes them, they're going to spend sort of 30 or 40 million rand. So to get it out on all the desks. So they get a huge benefit there. And then there's massive traction on the website. So it's a massively leveraged investment for them, and in terms of their CSR spend. So that's an important part of it. So in terms of book production, we have a core team. We always have a content coordinator. Some of you might have seen Megan's talk earlier. Megan's our natural sciences and life sciences content coordinator. So we're working on 4 to 6 books, for example. Who's in charge of the process, the curriculum design, unpacking the assessment, all of that, coordinating the authors, etc., the community. But then we try to get the community to feed into the process as much as possible, a sponsor, and then we manage the relationship with the Department of Basic Education to make sure that they're happy. Our books go through extensive review, and then they get printed. And so that's sort of, we can cover costs in that process, and then I think a little bit like, a little bit like Lumen Learning was saying, that you've got this core offering which is free, and then we do value-added services around it. So on this slide, there's something called Intelligent Practice listed at the top there. That's a machine learning engine we built to give learners an individualized practice experience for maths and physical science on the website, and that costs $15 a year for a kid to access either maths or science. And our rule of thumb is, if it's by, for, or with the community, then it's going to be free and open. And we're happy to charge for something if there's nobody in our community, in our context, that can actually help us build it. So that intelligent practice service, we had to build from scratch. No one could contribute to it. So then we're happy that we've added meaningful value. We try to charge a fee that makes it as accessible as possible. It's not an exorbitant fee. And it also works on different types of mobile phones, low-end feature phones. So we're really going for scale and keeping the price as low as possible. But we have to be very device agnostic. In terms of the feel-good OER piece, we had this great workshop, which Kathy Fletcher might have mentioned if you went to Kathy Fletcher's OER pub talk. Just a photograph. There's a group of teachers, sort of a small community of teachers from independent schools. They've got a different examinations board that are taking the OpenStax College physics textbook, our physics and chemistry content, and remixing it into a book that aligns closely with their subject assessment guidelines. So they like to split physics and chemistry into 2 books, which is great. We just do that. And Kathy's editor makes it really easy for teachers to do that. That's one of the challenges we found. Teachers want to remix stuff, but you've got to make sure that it's technically accessible for them. And they don't know XML and LaTeX and things like that. So we're really excited about this. This process has just started, but they don't have a deadline. They don't need to get it approved and printed by the government or anything like that. So that's really exciting for us. And so we hope that this will help the proliferation of resources, and we'll feed these resources back into our books and vice versa. They've agreed to release their content under a CC BY license as well as part of the process. So that will be important. So that's how we do the book production. And because of the traction we've got a plan to do a slate of titles. We want to make sure that there's Maths 4, 5, and 6, Maths 7, 8, and 9, Maths 10, 11, and 12. Our technical high schools have a different maths curriculum. We want to make sure that's available. We want to make sure that maths literacy is available. So that's a whole bunch more titles that we want to do in maths. Then for sciences, we've got 4 to 6. We want to do 7 to 9. The technology's coming in 7 to 9. Physical sciences we want to do life sciences, which is biology, geography and information technology, which is computer science. We'll do all of that. And then we want to do accounting and economic and management studies, some study guides, and then the FET colleges as something like your community colleges. So we want to hit those maths and chemistry and physics titles there. And this is our ambitious plan, is to make sure that these 50 titles exist for STEM subjects in South Africa under an open license by the end of 2016. And we're convinced that this will mean that the entire, it'll be a systemic shift in resource production and, well, in the whole publishing industry in South Africa. There's just no way they can go back from this to anything like what they had in the past. So that's what we're trying to do. And then just that intelligent practice, this is where we try to make our money. For learners, they can do unlimited practice at the appropriate level of difficulty. They get immediate detailed feedback, long-term progress tracking, etc. They can see their own level of mastery. For teachers, it's a formative assessment tool. If teachers choose to use it for their whole class, you can kind of log into the websites if you want and try it out. But they get kind of on-demand class reports for effort, mastery, speed, problem areas. And then it essentially becomes at large scale a passive monitoring system that tracks progress through the CAPS, which is our curriculum statement. It's an acronym for it. Learners' level of effort, their mastery, problem areas, and we can aggregate at class, school, district levels, or national levels. And so if we really had our way, our business model would be to make absolutely everything available for free and analyze this data. So we really have a company of people that would really like to just do the data analysis and learn about this stuff. And if the government would pay us enough for these reports to keep the company going, we'd make everything else available for free just to collect more data. But we'll bootstrap to that. So that's our kind of long-term goal. We can inform curriculum design, we can inform all sorts of things around teacher professional development, etc. Really help the government spend the billions they're spending much more effectively. I'm going to stop there, actually. That's all. So.
Well, we have 5 minutes.
Yeah, so there was 5 minutes of questions. So if there are any. Yes, sorry.
So I was wondering, you took out $15 per year for the access to the intelligent practice.
Yes.
That's paid directly by the end user.
Yeah.
Have you
So
tried to negotiate with the government?
Yes.
Try to get bank license?
So it's just a long-term conversation. So we've had a positive conversation, and with some of our provincial governments, and the conversation is progressing well. But it will just be a large enough sum that we'll have to go out to tender and stuff like that. So I'm confident that we could win a tender if it's, I mean, depending on when they write a tender doc, depends what they put in there. But if it's a tender for the kind of service we built, we definitely win that. There's no way any of our competitors, any competitor would actually have to bring in expertise from outside the country. There's nobody else doing anything like that in South Africa.
Is humanities or social sciences on your long-term plans or not? You're strictly STEM?
No. So we, so our current capacity is completely comfortable with all the subjects I mentioned.
Yeah.
We're not against it. So our rule is always, if a community comes to us and says that they want the books, we'll provide the support. So if they're going to help do that, and they want to produce the book and they're prepared to contribute their time in that, and they look like a well-organized, well-formed community, then we'll support them in that process. But then we want to see ourselves as more a support player. We can manage the process, we can provide the infrastructure, we can help. We'll appoint a content coordinator, we manage the review with the Department of Basic Education. There's no way a group of volunteers will ever manage dealing with government effectively, they just can't. So we take that burden away from them. We give them kind of these discrete chunks of ways that they can help us, and we make sure it adds up coherently to something which has a real meaningful impact at a national level, and their names go in the front of the book. So not a no, but definitely not about to happen, unless we get a good partnership going.
Mark, the intelligent practice and the data that's there seems to have a lot of similarities with what the Khan Academy is doing and all the learning analytics stuff that many others are trying to do. And I'm wondering if you've looked at what others are doing and kind of derived what you hope are the best analytics to track, and then you've obviously got something in place already, so have been getting data so far.
Yeah, so we've got about 120 schools using it at the moment. So about 45,000 students are using it actively.
Well, so my question was going to be, how much of the analytics is provided to the end student themselves as opposed to you, the publisher, or the class teacher, or the school district? In other words, are you hoping to have analytics actually help the student learning itself?
Oh, so so that's how we built it for self-directed study for an individual learner first and foremost.
Yeah, but did they see any of the analytics?
Yeah. So they can see their progress at any time, and they can see the difficulties of the questions, and they can see how from one session to the next we gauge their change in mastery. They can set their own targets, see their progress towards the targets. They can break it down by section, see their mastery, all of that stuff. So everything that they need to see. I mean, yeah, we're not keeping anything from them at this time. So the goal was to make it a tool that allows, because in the South African context, we have lots of underqualified maths and science teachers. So actually, if you make it available on really low-end mobile phones, kids out there who want to learn, but can't possibly get access to good instruction in any way, now have a free textbook and can actually get access to this. And it's not prohibitively expensive for them. So, anyway.
So back when the government decided to print all the textbooks, you kind of took all the publishers by surprise.
Yes.
So what has kind of changed as far as their tactics to market against you in order to try to get their textbooks?
I don't get a single Christmas card. Oh, this is being recorded, hey. I think they're still in shock in South Africa. So I was commenting, I think, to Megan earlier, we were chatting. Like when I look at the conversations that you have about OER and trying to get it and dealing with all the stakeholders here in the US, I was going to say, like, it's much more mature here. Like the battle lines are drawn very clearly. You've got your message is cost. That's the only thing. We're still happy to, depending on the audience, tweak the message a little bit, and that's okay in our context because it's not that well formed. You're really structured. They're actually, it seems like, actively being obstructive. And in South Africa, I think they're just still in shock that it actually happened. So the maths and science grade 10, 11, 12 is probably worth about 350 million rand to them, about $35 million. So I think they're going to struggle to get that back. The 4, 5, and 6 science, that'll also be worth, about the same amount of money. They're going to really struggle to get that back. But there's been they sued the government at one point, I believe. But they can't sue us. We're not doing anything illegal. They could probably try to claim that our practices are anti-competitive.
Are they introducing any new services, like the intelligent tutoring services?
So they've kind of moved to EPUBs. That's their big innovation. So we'll produce EPUBs of all our books at the end of the year, but then we actually just need to move to a meaningful learning experience. It's not a book, it's not an EPUB, it's got to be an adaptive learning experience. But what that's going to look like, I don't know exactly right now.
right. We'd like to encourage you to connect with our presenter either online or afterwards if you can, and thank him for his work.